Please stop calling me Shirley. Thank you for joining. My name is Mark, not Shirley. Grateful to you for being part of the morning meeting. Let's dive right in. In the daybook today, the president and the first lady are headed to Texas at 12:20 Eastern time. They arrive in Kerrville, 2:10 Eastern. They participate in a roundtable with first responders and local officials. And then 3:15, they fly out for Bedminster. There'll be a lot of coverage there. The out-of-town travel pool includes The Guardian, and the new media reporter is my Megyn Kelly Network
new media
colleague. My Megyn Kelly Network. No, that's the in town. Look who's going on the trip. Link Lauren. Nice. Link there Lauren will be on the trip. Lori, see if Link can join us at 6 o'clock. I'd like to have him on. Don't know what the vice president's doing. Have you ever done
the pool? I can't. I don't think I'd want. I mean, I don't know that I'd ever. You have like actual responsibilities.
Yeah, being in the pool is not easy. I used to kind of hate being in the pool because if you do any reporting, you have to give it to everybody.
Right. You also got to be on.
It's antithetical to my highly competitive instincts. Marco Rubio continues on in Asia. We'll hear from him in a moment on a range of topics. House and Senate are out, but that will not stop at 11:15. Mr. Jeffries, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, and other House members from having a press conference on Medicaid cuts in Louisiana, which is a very high percentage of Medicaid recipients. And Iowa back in the spotlight because Sean's friend, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, is in Iowa today to speak to the Family Leaders Summit. There's a link in my Substack if you want to watch it live at 4:54 Eastern time. This is an event which regularly features people who want to be president. In fact, I once interviewed Donald J. Trump at this event in Iowa. And Sarah is no dummy. And someday Sarah will run for president. And people.
By the way, it's
speaking of Iowa. Yeah. Does you guys think?
Hold on. Before we get to that one, can I just say the interesting about Sarah going there, Mark, to your point, is that she ran her father's operation, I think, twice.
Ran-ish. I don't know that she ran it.
No, but I mean, I think
she was involved. She was involved.
Right. So, I mean, she's actually got experience on the ground, understanding the process.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you go to like a Bob Vanderplatz thing, having the background.
Oh, yeah, 100%. She totally gets why she's going. And I just didn't want any disrespect on this program for either Hogan Gidley or Chip Saltzman. That's my only point.
No, you cannot disrespect the Hogan.
No, or Chip. Chip Saltzman's a Republican operative who ran Governor Huckabee's, the other Governor Huckabee's campaign. And if you go to the main production house in Nashville, where you do live TV hits from, the wall's filled with pictures of country music stars who do their publicity tour hits from there. But there's also a picture of Chip on the wall.
Do you know the name of it?
I can't remember. I've been there a million times. Stagecoach. And the great thing about Stagecoach, besides the pictures on the wall, is they have jars of candy. And because it's Tennessee, one of the jars, I believe the biggest jar, is filled with Goo Goo Clusters, which is Tennessee's official candy.
My favorite place to do hits from.
Yeah, it's a great place. They're super nice. And again, I laugh every time I go in there because there's like Conway Twitty and what's her name? Who sings?
Marsha Blackburn.
Who sings This Kiss?
Faith Hill,
Faith Hill, and then all these people. Marsha Blackburn's probably on the wall now, but the first time I went, it was all country western artists and Chip Saltzman. And if you know Chip, you'd find that particularly funny. In any event, let's get to our topics, gentlemen. Dan,
sir.
Dan. I sold Dan from. He was going to make another Iowa point that I know where he's going.
What was that, Dan?
Does Joni Ernst run for re-election?
Oh, that's all right. Let's do a mandatory prediction. Does she run for re-election? Sean.
Yes.
Dan.
I'm asking you guys. I don't know.
The correct answer is yes, she will.
Okay.
I believe, although not 100%. All right. In any event, Russia, President Trump did another chatty phone call with Kristen Welker. NBC wrote it up. He talked about 17 different things, and he teased some big announcement that he'll make Monday about Russia. Now, again, he didn't say he'd do it in the next 2 weeks. Maybe it'll happen, maybe not. But he says it's going to be a major statement on Monday. And Marco Rubio yesterday said that he and Lavrov came up with some innovative new undescribed, undetailed thing about how to break through the process. And here is Rubio today talking about the president's alleged Monday announcement. 106, please.
The president says that there's going to be an announcement coming relevant or relating to Russia on Monday. Can you tell us a little bit about what his thinking is based on your conversation last night, where things currently stand?
No. I mean, that's what Monday will be about.
All right, so no preview there. Dan, what do you think's going on between the president and his Secretary of State / National Security Advisor and Putin?
Well, I think, look, Trump, I think, still wants a deal. He wants to keep the line of communication open. I'm sure they're floating ideas and listening to what the Russians may, is there any change in what they want? Which is appropriate. I mean, as they should. They shouldn't ever stop trying to seek peace. But at the same time, there's nothing on the battlefield that shows that Putin is considering pulling back or suspending or pausing activities. And therefore, I'll be curious what he has to say on Monday. But there does seem to be excitement in Europe that he is really, leaning into protecting Ukraine. So we'll see what he has to say.
All right, Sean, before you weigh in, guys, don't look at your monitors. I wanted to do a quiz. What are the 3 cable news networks leading with this morning? 3 different leads. What are they leading with? CNN, Dan.
Epstein.
Wrong.
Climate change.
Wrong. Flood disaster related to climate change.
I might have.
Dan, you were close. Dan, Fox, what are they leading with?
Epstein.
Wrong. Immigration. Sorry, Sean, I jumped the gun.
I would have said
the pot raids.
Okay, and what's MSNBC leading with? I'll give you a hint. Susan Glasser's on. Sean.
Trump under investigation.
Wrong.
ICE raids.
Wrong. Dan.
Democracy.
Close. They're leading with Trump's inexplicable love affair with Putin. All right, take down the quad split.
Wait a second. That headline, like this week, he finally kind of stopped.
I know, but nonetheless, Susan Glasser
right.
They can't help themselves.
All right. Today, also, Trump didn't slap him on. Said he's going to slap some tariffs on Canada. And the Wall Street Journal has a very good piece saying, Trump's now using tariffs any which way he wants. It doesn't have to just do with economics. It can be to make a political point, like with Brazil, or to express anger over fentanyl with Canada. Here is Marco Rubio talking about tariffs. 108, please.
Mr. Secretary, what do you say to those who make the argument that the U.S. tariffs or the threat of those tariffs in the region actually creates an opening for China to be seen as the stable economic partner here?
I don't agree with that assessment. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the United States has built these tremendous trade imbalances over the last 30 or 40 years. It's unfair to American and American workers and in addition to threaten our industrial capacity. Trade needed to be revisited. The president campaigned on that. And that's what he's doing, and he's resetting it on a global scale. At the end of the day, look, I think countries are going to trade with multiple countries. We don't view this as an opening for anyone. We don't view it that way. We view it as an opportunity to reset global trade in a way that's fair for Americans after 2 or 3 decades of unfairness. If you look at some of these trade deficits, they're massive. They're massive. That has to be addressed.
Now, again, we've told you this before, all this trade stuff existing on multiple levels, but primarily it is about dealing with China on economics, defense, geopoliticals, everything. Today, Secretary Rubio, amongst the many meetings he had, was with the Chinese foreign minister, his counterpart. And here's what he had to say about that. Number 107, please.
What's your message to the foreign minister in the meeting?
Which foreign minister? Every meeting that I've had is with a foreign minister. Oh, well, look, it's very constructive. I think, as I said, the president has a very positive working relationship with President Xi, and obviously the relationship I have with a foreign minister should reflect that. So we acknowledged, there are some issues that are going to we have to work through, not just beyond trade, but others. But I thought it was a very constructive and positive meeting and gave us a lot to work on. So that was our message, was the opportunity here to achieve some strategic stability and identify areas where we can cooperate together on and build better communications and working trust.
Sean, we've been focused on the possibility of a Trump-Xi summit in U.S. and China, third country. Where does the United States' clever strategy to deal with China through the prism of trade stand?
I think it's better than it's been before in that they are finally starting to try to juxtapose other countries and build a coalition, which is a good thing. I just don't know. Dan said this yesterday. I think that the problem with both Putin for different reasons in Russia and Xi is that it's sort of like everybody keeps trying to figure out the different way that you might go at it and see if it's different. I applaud them for that, but I will see. I mean, I just don't see any sense that China's moving forward, and that's the key in this thing. Is that are they feeling rattled or find the need to change their ways? And I don't see anything in China's behavior that suggests that they are concerned about our posture in any way that changes how they're going to act.
She's got rare earth minerals in his back pocket. Dan,
Yep.
thoughts on what Sean said?
Yeah, I agree with Sean. And I think, what's curious is if you're trying to build the coalition of the willing against China, just in the last 48 hours, the Vietnamese have now said they didn't agree to a deal that Trump announced and that they're trying to get the tariff rate lowered. So Vietnam is one of the keys economically against China. He now slapped Canada, one of the biggest markets of Chinese products and oil consumption, and oil is Canada. So we've kind of gone to economic war a little bit with the Canadians. So you just kind of look at it quizzically and say, if the goal is to surround China and kind of, strangle it, we're not doing a great job.
Well, I talked yesterday about how positive it is that Macron and Starmer are like getting, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to team up to like pay more attention to what's happening in our backyard and coordinate our missile response. We need that in the same way with China, which is to say, guys, you're either with us, you're against us. This is what their goal is. Cut it out. I think we effectively did it a few years ago with Huawei. You remember there was this, especially in Europe, there was this, hey, look, it's cheaper to buy all the Huawei stuff. And yet it was like, guess what? It's inherently bugged with things that are going to undermine your economy. And we won that argument. And I think we grinded away, but I think it's a somewhat of a model to say, guys, you choose now between good and evil. You may not like all of our tactics and that we're talking about fairness on trade, but this is bigger. This is existential. This is about our existence.
I think, except for the rare earths, as Sean suggested, we're in a better. U.S. is in a better place than it's been, but I still don't see how they solve that. All right, yesterday, I was on Charlie Kirk's program and we talked about the Epstein story.
I was on WOR. And
I'm just saying, I talked to Charlie Kirk, happened to be on his show, and he's as supportive of the president as anybody, but he is really up in arms about Epstein and says everybody under 30 in MAGA is up in arms about it. And so we tried to put together a focus group last night of people under 30 who voted for Donald Trump to see what they thought about Epstein. We couldn't quite get it together in time. But by chance, we did have one of our member of our community come on, a 21-year-old guy named Colin from Tallahassee. And I'm not saying he speaks for every young MAGA supporter, but he speaks for tens of millions, or at least millions. I don't know how many there are, but he speaks for lots of people. Here is from last night's Two-Way Tonight. This is Colin from Tallahassee.
Hi, I'm calling from Tallahassee, Florida. And this past election was the first that I was old enough to vote in, but I went to Trump's first inauguration and then again this year. And so I've been a longtime supporter of him. On the Epstein stuff, this is the first time so far in the administration that I've been just disappointed. Like I cringed watching him respond. I think he was in the cabinet meeting.
Yes,
when
sir.
he, interjected with Pam Bondi. I didn't understand. Like he's got to understand from his base perspective. I just think if he were, to call and ask, what should I do? Just let it all out.
Colin, let me ask you this. I consistently find anecdotally, and you're another data point here, that young people seem particularly passionate about this. Do you have a thought about why young people find it so important that there be transparency on this matter?
I think it's just on this and everything else from, the Iraq war to the financial crisis to COVID. It just feels like we're constantly being lied to and like being told, don't believe your lying eyes, we know better. Just the constant lying. It seems like this is just another example of that.
Is this something you talk about with your friends? Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can stipulate that young people care about this and that there's this through line to the financial crisis in Iraq and all sorts of things. Sean, if the president decides that this is an issue, not just with young people, but with MAGA, what can he do?
Well, first of all, I want to just go back to what Colin said, because I think that's important. I looked at the Epstein thing more from the victim standpoint. Like I feel that these young women that were victimized deserve some justice. And it's fascinating to hear younger people, and I agree with you. He may not speak for everyone, but I hear the same things when I ask younger people, like, why do you care? And it's that through line about transparency and lying. You have COVID, Iraq, all these things that I think young people look and go, wait, this government continues. I mean, big pharma, all the stuff where we find out that, like, well, you knew about this and you didn't do anything. And it's fascinating how these folks are processing things. And so I think that was really good because it shows like you can care about the same issue for different reasons. Like I said, a lot of the older folks that I talk about it look at it as a victim issue, that these young women deserve justice from the people that perpetrated them. So I was fascinated to hear that because I think it's interesting to see why the younger voter cares in a very different way, but yet are equally as passionate. I don't know is to answer your question, because the problem is I don't see how you give a little on this. You're either in for, what's the saying, you're in for a dime or in for a dollar, because you can't release some of the names because some people are great. If I know that you're on the list and you put me out, I'm going to out you, and then it becomes an absolute S show. So I don't know. The problem is that I think they're just going to do what they did, which is we're going to say it's stupid to talk about it. We're not going to speak another word and hope. But as I said the other day, I don't know how, if a list exists in Washington, D.C. in particular, that no one can, somebody's going to say it. You saw the clip that I showed yesterday has now gotten almost 2 million views of Alan Dershowitz saying on my show, I've seen it. I know a list exists. Now, whether or not the list that he saw ever made it into the hands of the authorities, I don't know. I didn't ask him that. But the point is, we all know that there are people. Jeffrey Epstein went to jail. Giselle Maxwell went to jail. So for a reason. So there are victims. There are people that, and so that crimes were committed against. And so the question is, in some shape or form, whether it's a list or 5 pieces of paper, I don't know. But I just, at some point, I got to think if it truly does exist, somebody's going to say something.
Dan Halperin's 4th rule of Washington, when something is famous for not being released, it will have to be released.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, to Sean's point, and I go back to, it's got all the makings. It's sex, it's powerful people, it's supposed conspiracy. Look, Emma Jo Morris, who we know, who's on the group chat with me, talked about this yesterday as well. She added in the Hunter Biden laptop and COVID and the allegations about Russian interference. And as someone who's, of MAGA and for MAGA, Emma Jo was just like, I'm tired of this sense of being lied to and told not to believe stuff. So I'm surprised at the power that and how resonant this seems to be with a lot of parts of MAGA. But Trump is smart. Trump keeps his ear low to the ground. I have to think he's not going to just try to bulldoze past this.
But Dan, answer the question that Mark asked me, which is, if you if you were asked how would, and said, okay, we're getting pummeled on this, how do we respond? I don't have an answer.
Well, they can explain better than they
can. That's it. So like if your line is really there is nothing, and it's a lot of people around you that hyped this, then you're going to have to send people. Maybe he fires Pam Bondi. Something where he gives to the gods to say, I hear you, you're frustrated and you're angry. Classic Trump. So am I. It's outrageous that she did this.
Yeah.
Okay, but play it out. Yeah. Fires Pam Bondi, which again, Pam is just the messenger as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Then the next person's going to have to. Then Dan, you're next. Release the list.
Walk into the briefing room, stay for as long as reporters have questions, and say, here's the chronology. Here's what we've released. Here's what's left. Here's why some of it can't be released. Here's what that is. Everything. Like now what we know, with the exception of names that we don't think it would be fair to release. That's I think all they can do. I know it won't satisfy everybody, but like the other day, Pam Bondi says, well, every day there's a 1 minute gap. No, you got to explain that better.
Yeah,
you want this to go away. This weekend, Charlie is hosting an event with his young army in Florida. I think it's in Orlando. and a bunch of prominent people, are, including from the administration, are going to speak. I guarantee you this will be a big topic of conversation there. Guarantee it. And I wonder if the administration's focused on it. All right, we're halfway through our topics. We'll do some of these next ones a little bit faster, but if you'd like to get in on the conversation, and if you're under 30 and have a view of Jeffrey Epstein, please, I would love you to raise your hand. We'll get to your questions in just a bit. All right. Gavin Newsom got more favorable coverage for his South Carolina trip. The chair of the DNC, Mr. Martin, was on the NewsHour and asked to condemn Mr. Mondami's comments about Antifa, not Antifa, Antifa, right? Antifa. I always say it wrong, but it's not Antifa. It's
the
Intifada.
Yes.
Thank you. And he wouldn't condemn them. He said we need a big tent. So here's my question, Dan. Like, could Gavin Newsom step forward now? And I mean, he's always pretty available in the media, et cetera, but could he try to basically take over the function of spokesperson for the Democratic National Party off the strength of this trip, or that's a bridge too far?
I don't know if you want to own everything right now. I think he's in a perfect place, which is there's energy, there's excitement. You want to tease a little bit. You don't want to step forward now and take every bullet and be the one that they all raise to. When you want to speak, you will, people will put the microphone in front of you. I do want to say, I mean, to Ken Martin, it's embarrassing. It's a common sense test.
Right.
You can be supportive of people who are sympathetic for Palestine without saying it's fine to say that phrase. It's
Right.
just insane that he felt so boxed in
Right.
that he had to take that line.
Right. Sean, let's say the DNC.
And by the way, Mark, can I just say this?
Yes,
if
sir.
I were Gavin Newsom, I would call out Ken Martin. You want to show a little nimbleness and a little leadership. You say hey, look, I support the chairman, whatever, but that is unacceptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Sean, if you were a consultant to the DNC and they said, look, he's the chair. We've given him tons of media training. If you watch the NewsHour interview, the guy is reciting lines that he was told to memorize by his comm staff. Would you say he can't be out anymore? Hire a comms director and that person should be the spokesperson because he can't do it? Or do you think he's salvageable as an effective national spokesperson based on the available evidence?
Welcome to the team, Sean.
Is Tim Hogan available to go to that meeting?
Yeah.
Tim would be there. Probably.
Yeah, Tim would be there. I'd say, hey, ask Tim. Look, I think the answer is more. No, look, he says what he has to say, as you pointed out. So I think the point is more strategic, which is, look, here's what we have to do, and either you have to be willing to hew that line, or we can't do these interviews. We're gonna, but this is causing us problems.
Well, but just as the binary. If you were in charge of the comms decisions, would you say the chairman's just got to get better, or would you say the chairman really shouldn't be doing much media and we got to find somebody else to carry the message?
The problem is he has to get better because you can't put someone else out. I've done this job. I did that for 6 years.
He could find a member of Congress. We've talked about this, and make somebody
but if he's going to raise money, if he's going to have a profile,
once you take, I mean, you emasculate yourself the second.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this from my.
Yeah, I agree. You'll emasculate yourself. You won't be able to raise money. You both are making the right points. But I'm telling you, go watch his NewsHour interview.
I get it. But at some point you say, if you can't do that, no, but this is the come to Jesus moment, which is, sir, if you can't do this, then you can't fundraise, you can't do this, and you might as well resign. Right. So either you listen to us and do what it is, or you're just going to go down
I'm telling you, I think that's the best he can do. Tanya, that's the best he can do.
I think the question now is, do you start getting people calling for someone like Terry McAuliffe? Do people start, because it's always, if not him, then who?
Right.
And do people start now saying, because I mean, look, I'm a fundraiser. I cannot imagine those comments and now trying to call people to raise money.
I can't tell you. Let me just say, I can't tell you how many people I've heard from, and I may have said this on this program before, but I find it so instructive and humorous. I can't tell you the number of people who said to me, they get a request. Would you like to do a Zoom? A potential donor. Would you like to do a Zoom with Ken Martin? And the two most common answers are no or who's Ken Martin.
So one of the things that I experienced during my tenure, the donors expect the chairman to be on television.
Yes.
Want to see you. And if they don't, they think there's a problem. So if you can't do that.
But they expect them to be on television and good at it.
Right. Yeah. But my point is that's why, to your question, the binary question to the chairman is, sir, if you can't do this, you cannot be effective. Therefore, you must step down or appoint a general chairman.
Yes.
But
yes. And we're not showing you clips from the thing because the whole thing is a disaster. We'd have to show you a 15-minute interview. But if you're interested in understanding why some people have reached the conclusion that the chair can't be an effective messenger, go watch him on the NewsHour. All right.
Yes.
What did you say? What?
I said of all the places that it is.
I know.
Not
I
like,
know.
Dude,
I
It's
know.
not like some,
He whiffed on the NewsHour.
he might as well have gotten the 60 Minutes crew to edit it for him because
Exactly. All right. We all know that President Trump is on a long-running campaign to try to force the Fed chair out or blame the Fed, make him a scapegoat, just make his life miserable. Things ratcheted up yesterday quite a bit. Put up, looking at my list here. You know what I want. Trump on the Fed. What number is that? Is that on the list? Is that on the list? Maybe I made that up. Anyway, I thought it was. Anyway, Donald Trump, Kevin Hassett, OMB said the Fed chair is lavishly remodeling the Fed inappropriately. Here it is. I didn't make it up. Yeah. Trump inflation, it's up. Here's why it matters. Well, that's not the right. Never mind. That was a different story I was thinking about. Anyway, just back to the basic question, which is, Sean, they obviously, there was like a memo that went out yesterday. What's the name of the deputy chief of staff who does politics?
James Blair.
James Blair. He went after the Fed chair yesterday too. And Scott Besant's been going after him. Like, Sean, what's the objective here? Is it to force him out? Is it to make him a scapegoat? Is it to just, vent and make his life miserable? Like, what's the actual goal of this coordinated, multi-pronged attack against Mr. Powell?
All of the above.
I was just gonna say, yep. Like 1, 2, and 3.
It's like, if you won't resign, we're gonna make your life hell. If your life, it's just sort of like, let's just, And the thing is that when there's a target in Trump world, right, and you see the president aim at it, to your point about James Blair and others, it's like, okay, it's a might as well just pile on and you get credit for.
Yeah. All right, Dan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I do think it's somewhat horrifying that all these stories say a prerequisite for the job is you will cut interest rates. Like, that is not in anyone's interest to potentially cause inflation again. Like, the Fed is right to be a little cautious. Inflation was scarring for this country. The number of people voted for Trump because of inflation under Joe Biden's watch, and to now be railing that you need to cut interest rates while we have all the stimulus about to come flying back into the system. It's crazy.
Well,
crazy.
Why is it crazy to want a Fed chair that's going to implement policies that you
because Donald Trump is not the job of the Fed chair is to set interest rates based on economic conditions as they are at that moment. It is not because the president of the United States wants to just have cheap money so he can say he grew the economy. Like, that's not the job of the Fed. The dual mandate: low employment and keep costs under control.
Yes or no? Exit question. Will Powell serve out his term? Dan?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
The correct answer is yes. All right. Wall Street Journal reported last night that...
By the way, I think the bigger question is, when will Trump announce his replacement? Because that to me is it November or February?
Thanksgiving. 110. Wall Street Journal reported last night that the plutocrats who want to stop socialist mayor in Gotham City are going to flush $20 million down the toilet. As the story points out, they have no actual strategy. They have no candidate. They have no plan. Most of them are under the illusion that they've made so much money in the private sector, they don't need to look at data. And if they looked at data, they'd see that Mayor Adams' approval rating makes it mathematically impossible for him to win this race, no matter who else, even if it's one-on-one. He can't beat Mondami. So nonetheless, Mayor Adams persists. And here's a new video Mayor Adams has made, 112A, tweeted
Talk
it out.
a little bit about
the video.
your impression of Zoran Mamdani.
He is an academic elitist. He studied poverty. I live poverty. His programs are going to impact working class people. The issue of affordability is real. People are hurting, and you're saying, I'm going to promise you things that you can't deliver. His foundation for free buses, which costs $3 billion, is to raise the income tax of the 1% of New Yorkers. He doesn't have the power to do that. Mayors can't do that. You know who can? Assemblyman. He's an assemblyman. He didn't do it in the assembly. So why is he going to do it here as the mayor? Then when you talk about government-run supermarkets, I've been to Cuba. I know what a government-run supermarket looks like.
The Cuban supermarkets have extremely good plantains, just so you know. It's not all downside with the Cuban supermarkets. Dan, my daily check-in, percentage chance that Mr. Mondami is elected mayor.
Haven't changed. What did I say yesterday? 60 or 56, 57, I think. Look, here's the one thing. I agree that story was hilarious because it's just the classic freak out of the donor class. Mondani has not been above 45% in a single poll. And
Correct.
That gives, if I'm whoever who doesn't like Mondani, that gives me comfort. In several, he's not even above 40.
Correct. But
the majority of New Yorkers are not with him.
But who's going to beat him?
The majority of New Yorkers are not with him.
Dan, you're sounding like these donors who want to write $1 million checks
into
the trash.
I'm not.
Tick tock. Every second goes by.
Yeah, and he's getting more and more endorsements.
Who cares about it? I mean,
Sean, what number are you at? Dan's at
82.5.
No.
80. The correct answer is 85%.
Oh no,
I have my one. Well, you reminded me yesterday. If I keep going up, I'll hit the ceiling of 100. I still am waiting for Oppo. I still have the highest spidey sense possible that something's coming. That's not about his dad, because they're still big into his dad. His dad's pretty out there. I don't think his dad could be elected mayor, but I think there's still something coming on video or in his own words that's going to be. It's going to be just front page everywhere. And
I also just think don't underestimate when all of New York starts coming back into town here, mid to late August, and starts focusing their mind. I want to see if his
real New Yorkers are not out of town in the Hamptons. They're at their jobs.
In the Hamptons, but once the schools are out here, people have all look at the traffic. Even in
all right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when the school starts? What's going to happen?
I want to see if his numbers start moving up. Okay. Because they're not.
By the way, just $20 million in New York in a race is like 800 points of television.
Right, exactly. That's the other thing that's hilarious about 20 million. Plus, it's not like they've raised it; they have plans to raise it. All right, Sean, winner of the week.
Okay. Normally, as you guys know, by Wednesday I got it locked in. There was a lot of contestants this week. I want to pay tribute to the first responders down in Texas. Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin, amazing story. But I wanted to kind of go against the grain in this week and find something that didn't get a lot of praise. My winner of the week is Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. For weeks on end, we talked about the problems at Newark and how it was screwing up air traffic all over the summer. And quietly and yet steadfastly, Sean Duffy and the folks over there got the runways up, got the ATC issues fixed. And by all accounts, it has been absolutely a phenomenal turnaround. And yet it went completely under the radar, got no credit. And so for that reason, I want to call out Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation.
Dan, winner.
That is a great call. And by the way, the ultimate Trump sign of approval, wasn't he nominated or proposed for another job at the same time now?
Yeah, no, he's heading NASA.
That's it. Yeah, so it's the ultimate sign in Trump world. You're doing great. Here's another job.
Yeah.
My winner of the week, Gavin Newsom. As a Democrat, that's the best set of publicity that I've seen anyone get since last November for 48 hours.
I'll do my winners and losers at the same time because they're related. And my winner's the same as what Sean initially touted. The acts of heroism in Texas, those folks, just incredible. The capacity to think about others and people who save scores of people, just incredible. My loser are these local officials. I understand the pressure they're under, but these press conferences are an embarrassment. You cannot continue to say we're focused on rescue and recovery and grieving, and we'll deal with public policy issues in the future. They have to explain now how this could possibly have happened. This was not an aberration. And I don't know how many of you watch these press conferences. They're just an embarrassment. And one local official was just chiding the reporters and saying they were impolite. It's not impolite to try to protect the public interest, to get people to understand how this could have happened. It's not gotcha, but they clearly know that they screwed it up and they don't want to talk about it. And it's horrible. Dan,
by the way, the one cool thing to your point, Mark, about the folks down in Texas is what I love about so many of these stories is it's just average Americans doing really heroic.
Sorry to interrupt. Put up Fox as quick as you can, please. Sorry. Put up Fox as quick as you can.
Mandami?
They're showing the soundbite from the chairman, and Fetterman's going to react to the chairman live. Fox audio, please.
Globalize the intifada in a recent interview.
There's no candidate in this party that I agree 100% of the time with, to be honest with you. There's things that I don't agree with Mamdani that he said. We win by bringing people into that coalition. And at the end of the day, for me, that's the type of party we're going to lead. We are a big tent party.
Well, it's kind of mushy, I think. You know, even in politics, it's kind of a mushy answer. He did not condemn the question as it was posed. What do you see as the problem with Mamdani as it may affect the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, for me, clearly, the GOP are now going to use him as their tent pole of
All right, sorry. He said this before. I thought my friend Bill Hemmer was going to ask Fetterman about the chairman, but he didn't. So dump out of that. Sean, I apologize. Pick back up.
No. I was just saying what I loved was when we talked about the military stuff a couple weeks ago and the strikes in Iran, these are highly trained guys. What I loved about Texas was just average everyday Americans standing up, doing heroic things, and showing how great how great we are as a country and our people are. So I wanted to put a pin on that.
Okay, loser.
Again, a lot of contenders this week. I think Elon's political flop was a high contender with this New America Party, but I'm going to give my loser to M&Ms and Skittles. While everyone else is getting rid of red dyes, they're doubling down on dyes and saying that they refuse to put them out. And I hope that they see the error of their ways and come to their senses.
Dan, loser.
We'll have to see by Halloween, Sean, where that is. I'm going to say the federal government, the people in particularly Washington, D.C., the court ruling this week, there are going to be a lot of layoffs coming very soon. You can be supportive of that or opposed to it, but these are people with lives. I know a lot of folks have family work in government. Trump has every right to do what he's doing, but there's about to be a lot of change.
Okay. Sean, what are you looking for this weekend?
Stability.
All right. I'll take it. Dan?
It goes to the conversation we had earlier. What does Trump do this weekend? Does he have a social media, tweet storm? Because his base is a little restless this weekend. And it's the first time, I think, since 2022 or 2021, he's got a little bit of a restless base. So his history is he feeds them something.
Well, that's kind of, you hit the nail on the head why I said stability, because I think this weekend he's going to leave Texas, go to Bedminster. And the question is, does he go on a tweet storm because he's got nothing big on the agenda to solve? Or is it just like under the radar, good weather, play golf all day?
Yep.
How will he feel if that Charlie Kirk symposium, people start popping off and he's sitting there hearing it with his officials standing there?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Is the dynamic between Charlie's event and the president's Truth Social feed.
Let me tell you this real quick, because I'm not kidding when I say this. The forecast for Bedminster: Saturday 30% chance of rain, Sunday 40% chance of rain.
Yeah.
Why that matters? Bedminster is not the same as Mar-a-Lago in terms of the ability to go out and just hang out. Like it's right. So
just a man. It's just a man and his phone.
And in a much smaller cabana. Yeah. And so if you're there, to your point, and you're watching Fox and seeing, then you're going to get a much different reaction.
Yeah. Now our first community member today has a first name that can be spelled 7 different ways and pronounced 5 different ways. I know because I'm very familiar with this name. So I'm not even going to try to guess. Well, I am. I'm going to say Alicia. How close was I?
Close. Very close.
All right.
Alicia.
What's your Alicia?
Yeah.
All right. I was closer than most people come. You have to admit, closer than most people come. Welcome in. Tell folks. Thank you. Tell folks why your parents gave you that name, where you are, and what's on your mind.
So Florida by way of Boston, but I have no idea why I got Alicia, but I grew up in a very Portuguese immigrant community down in the South Shore.
Got it.
So, yeah, my parents immigrated over from Portugal.
Amazing. And how do people in Florida like your accent?
Interesting. I'm on the phone all the time for work, and when they hear me and they're like, "Where do you live?" I say Florida. They're like, "Not really." Yeah.
In Florida, we call that wicked odd.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, welcome and thank you for joining. Tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, so I have 4 kids, 2 just voting age, 2 almost there. And I was listening last night and to the young man speaking. I totally forgot his name.
Colin, and he's on again today.
Interesting. My son is also Colin, but and I had listened to Next Up. So I will say, maybe you're not on TikTok enough because I get all the youngins on the TikTok telling me everything that's going on. My son, younger son, big Charlie Kirk fan. And I will say, even for myself, the whole Epstein thing is very upsetting.
Are you talking about the victims or about the cover up or both?
The cover up. Honestly, I think even for like my 21 and 23-year-old, they're like, and the things going on TikTok, what's being said. I think it's more like the elites always get away with everything, and it doesn't matter the party. So I think the outrage is real, and I think really it's Pam Bondi's handling of it was terrible, and the kids aren't letting it go. So I think there's got to be a little bit more thoughtfulness into how that's handled.
You said the kids won't let it go. Is that what you said?
Yeah, they're not going to let it go. They really.
Let me ask you this question. I appreciate all you said, and Dan and Sean, I bet are going to want to ask you questions too about your point of view and your kids to the extent you know it. Why are people not outraged about, say, Donald Trump and his friends getting rich, like President Trump, selling these crypto stuff, the NFTs? Like that's the elites using the system for themselves. Why is that not also a comparable source of outrage?
I totally don't think that this generation, and I'm just speaking for my kids and what I understand from them, but maybe some of how also I taught them in a regard. They're not in the public schools, I homeschool them, but they're not so mad at capitalism, and like you've got something, you can sell it and you do the best you do to sell it. Like you create things, you engineer things, you do all the things. No one's mad about that. They're not upset about that. Everyone seems to think they've got the opportunity, if they can, to use their intellect brain to do all of that. So they're not so mad about that. I guess selling influence might be a little different, but capitalism not so much. But really just the cover up of everything, especially during COVID, and the lack of transparency. And there's a way to be transparent without releasing names of people who did nothing wrong.
Right. Dan.
Your kids, I think you said two of them can vote, two of them aren't quite there. Are the four of them generally supporters of Donald Trump, or do they like Donald Trump?
All right, so the one that is in college, unfortunately, she's not a fan of Trump, and she was a Kamala voter. And my older son made a 35-mile trip on voting day to cancel out her vote. So it's very, and my two youngers are very, very conservative, but that's also the Charlie Kirk influence. Yeah. And I will say, even like for me as a mom, I don't even worry about the younger kids as much because they've got a lot more positive influences like him on the internet and things like that. The college one is not as resilient. There's some of that influence. And then the older one went into the trades and, kind of learned.
So I asked because do they, let's say the three Trump supporters and even the one who's not, are they angry at Trump? Are they angry at kind of the institution of government more broadly?
Institution.
Interesting.
Of government more broadly. I don't actually, I think that they wouldn't necessarily hold it against Trump himself. Of course, he's not up for re-election, but I do think to some extent it has an impact on the brand,
Okay. So JD Vance, they may think a little less of, who's been, by the way, pretty quiet on this topic.
He has, but also they wouldn't go to somebody like a Newsom. I mean, there's no trustworthiness about him at all whatsoever.
Yeah, be patient. Maybe he'll win him over.
I don't know. Don't think so.
I want to take off Mark's question a little. Like, I'm blown away by, again, I sympathize with him for different reasons. I care about the Epstein thing, but not like the level of passion that some of these folks have. But I can't believe, like, we look at, as I've said on the show over and over again, like China is staring down us economically, militarily, in terms of, and they like literally write it down and say, we're coming after you. And Iran has, the potential. I mean, like, to me, we face real existential threats to our freedom. And I'm amazed at like what gets people outraged. And so when you look at the thing what you just said in terms of your outrage on this issue, where does it pay compare to other issues vis-a-vis China, the debt, things like that?
Honestly, I think I'm just speaking for the younger generation, and from what I know, from a national standpoint, they're like, no new wars. They're happy they got away with the bombing of Iran without any sort of huge ramifications of that. They're very much of the America first. And listen, my parents immigrated here, but they did it legally. My friends were all immigrant Portuguese. They all did it legally. Some of them just becoming citizens. The illegal immigration, from that point of view, is like a huge thing. Taking away jobs from them, whoever thinks that doesn't take away jobs from them. And like, let's just say the 16, 17-year-olds out looking for jobs, it certainly does. And they see the impacts of that and what their future looks like here, like in America. I'm not saying they don't look at more of a global thing, but they are positive on the immigration results. They are positive on the border results. They are positive on some things, but the transparency thing, like if you can't trust people, I guess, or trust an institution, that kind of, it has a trickle down effect. It isn't just like it's a Republican or a Democrat. It's just trusting in the institution.
If President Trump called you and asked you what he should do to deal with this, what would you tell him?
I think there's a way to say we can't release everything for XYZ reasons, but just be transparent. If there was like,
should he do it himself or have the FBI or the Justice Department do it? Think it's important he do it himself?
I think he can do it himself. I think he's got a way of talking to the American people in a way that they can understand. And I think people would accept that as long as it was coming from an honest, trustworthy standpoint.
Is this the first time you've raised your hand on one of our programs?
The first time I've been on the Zoom. I was like so passionate last night after I was like kind of listening, but I've been listening since the election and I love the program. But yeah, I usually listen off YouTube later in the day.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. Grateful for you. Thank you for being part of Two Way.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We're lucky enough to have Washington's premier political strategist with us, Mark Bednar.
Hey.
Mark worked on Capitol Hill for a variety of people, including Speaker of the House, Mr. McCarthy. Welcome in, sir. What's on your mind?
Thanks, everyone. And also for interim NASA Administrator Sean Duffy, which is a great title.
Yeah.
Better
than former reality TV show host, star, rather. Also
all the above,
but not as
good. In DC, it gets you a better table in a restaurant.
Right.
Yes, sir. What's on your mind? Thank you for joining.
So, thinking a lot about Mamdani and just kind of the Republicans' attempt to kind of nationalize him as like a boogeyman for like at least in the current news cycle, but also potentially for the midterms. And on one hand, on paper, there's a lot of good things to go after him for. He said a lot of repugnant stuff and has some really outlandish views on things. But I'd be curious for both Dan and Sean, how much legs does that really have? Because it kind of reminds me like there was a presidential candidate in 24 who tried to nationalize Dr. Fauci as the boogeyman and COVID lockdowns. And like on paper, that was like a good argument, but ultimately no one really cared. So if this guy ends up becoming the mayor of New York, does that really have an impact? Are Democrats in swing districts
Mark,
Trump?
Before they answer, I want to challenge your premise. How do you know no one cared?
Primary voters.
What about them?
I mean, just like instinctively, like in debates, that candidate would try to raise like his contention with Dr. Fauci. And the argument just kind of fell flat. It never seemed like it punched through. That was obviously we're talking about DeSantis.
I have the opposite instinct, but
yeah,
Sean, go ahead.
No, I think I mean, I think like it's a good proposition, Mark, but I also will see how it manifests itself. Do the attacks stick, right? Is it personal? Like, I think it can go in several different directions. If it's about his policies and how nutty he is, I think that could manifest itself one way. If everyone tries to make it personal, I think it could go off the rails.
But would voters in the 13 Trump seats for the midterms this year, would they really care about a House Democrats affiliation with like the mayor of New York, a place they've never been?
I can tell you.
That's my question.
I can tell you Hakeem Jeffries thinks it might happen.
So that's what I was going to say. That to me, the issue is the party's brand is one of weakness, not knowing what it wants to do, right? Like, we don't have a set of policies. If we got power back, like, the fact that Jeffries and Schumer, who are our two leaders, right, from literally New York City, will not speak of him. They will not condemn him. They will not criticize. They won't say they support
or endorse. Yeah.
Or endorse. So I think where it becomes potentially powerful is to say they live in that city. They're so weak. They're so afraid. They won't criticize him. They won't, yeah, to Mark's point, endorse or whatever. So what will you then transition to? They're going to try to impeach Trump. They're going to do like all the crazy stuff to say you shouldn't give them power. It's not Rahm Emanuel's and Chuck Schumer in 2006. Remember, 6 for 06. It was like school uniforms, essentially. It was like small ball. If we got power back, Pelosi said, like, we're not going to cut off the funds to the war in Iraq. Like, we had a set of messages that projected control, and this is why you could trust us to give us power back. It's the opposite. So Mamdani just sits out there, and I think you can tag it until they speak up.
Great point. Super interesting.
Mark, thank you. Always love having you on.
It's very depressing, but
it's so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Maureen, welcome, and tell folks to know where you are, what's on your mind.
I'm in Los Angeles now, and what's on my mind is when you're asking about the outrage with regard to the Epstein thing. As a 25-year investigator with the FBI, I'll tell you that there are undoubtedly several lists, but they have to be able to prove what those lists are. And Epstein was a smart guy. So, obviously there's a list of the manifest on the Lolita Express. There's going to be a number of those that we've seen partials of in the past. There are also going to be lists of business partners or business development. And he was crafty. I'm sure he was crafty. And I'm sure there is a whole bunch of footage, but they may not have found it. When you have an island like that, I mean, there's likely several places where he was hiding external hard drives that would have files attached or whatever. This would be the stuff for, name your predator buddy. So, there is a lot to go through. There's also a continuum of what these people, what their activities might have been. Some people just got a massage from a girl that may have or may not have been 18 years old. Other guys went exactly where we're guessing everyone went. And I think part of the problem with what the MAGA base is having right now is that, hey, you ran on, going against everyone that says, don't listen to your lying eyes. And here you are telling us there's nothing to see here, move on. That's what I think. It's kind of like being in a relationship with someone that's based on trust, like a marriage or a partner. And all of a sudden you find out they're texting with some chick at the office and you're just like, it just calls everything else into question. And that was in response to your question, Sean, when you say, with all this big stuff going on, why are you worried about that? Because it's like in a marriage, if you found that out, all of a sudden, no matter what the big stuff is going on, you're side-eyeing everything that happens as a result. So I think
I guess, yeah. And just to be clear, Maureen, I guess I agree with you. I get it. Cause that's the point that I was trying to get at though, is that like, why is this different for some people? And you're saying it, I wasn't questioning it. I think for me, what's fascinating is that, so I just want to be clear. I totally agree with you. For me, I'm fascinated the same way that Mark brought that young man on to hear what drives some people to certain issues. So I just want to be clear. I agree with your point. Yeah. I just am intrigued personally why certain issues drive certain when other issues don't.
But the bottom line is the messaging has been absolutely horrible, and they need to put a comms plan together. And it needs to say, hey, we do have lists, but we can't put them out for the following reasons, as a number of people have said. We don't know if these people are just business associates because he had a ton of them. We figure that there's probably 300 business associates and they were investing money in all these things or whatever. So, I mean, the comms plan is key. I don't know who's doing it, but it's awful. You have Pam Bondi saying there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of video. Okay, well, show us some of the innocuous stuff if it's communicate.
I think, Maureen, you said it so well. I've been saying this. It depends on what your definition of list is. And I think that's the thread they've tried to kind of finesse. But I have said exactly what you did. He kept meticulous business records. I can't imagine that those are not somewhere. And that's your list a little bit.
but they're also convoluted. Like
Yep.
when if you're a crafty person and you're trying to hide something, it's not going to look like what it actually is, and you're
That's
going to have
exactly
like a
it.
code, and there's going to be. I'm sure there's all kinds of external hard drives hidden someplace.
Well, and by the way, I mean, we just know of certain very, very senior Wall Street executives that have publicly kind of gone through the ringer on this, that, it was a little bit here, a little bit there for, introductions to institutional investors, to opening doors with heads of state. Like, so if you're an accountant or you're someone in that company, it was Apollo and JP Morgan and then Barclays, and you're seeing these, you're like, okay, that's legit. We pay people $5 million to, go get us in the door with this president of this country and, to get an institutional investor. That makes sense. You just didn't know there was more to it.
Maureen, answer my question from before, though, or what I put out there, which is, do you believe that in an instance like this, in a case like this, that there are enough people that would have seen a list or the list that at some point it comes out?
Yes, for sure. If there's a list, but again, I'm going to say there's probably a bunch of lists and they're trying to figure them out. And what we do when we're investigating something like this is what I call we drop the dominoes. So we'll say, hey, here's this list. This is a list of people. What do they all have in common? These people have nothing in common. Okay, well, this is probably a good list for us to focus on. So let's find everything we can on these people going in all these, so you're trying to, and give me, the other thing I would say about this, now I sound like Sean, going from one idea to the other because my brain, I can't help myself. But the other thing is,
welcome to the morning meeting.
The evidence. What about all the evidence from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial? Why aren't we looking at that? Where's the list? This woman was convicted. Convicted on what? Let's spell that out.
Yes.
That's adjudicated. You can't tell me that stuff has to remain hidden.
Yes. Maureen, thank you. Always love having you on. Thanks for coming back.
Awesome.
We're waiting we may warn our stations, our affiliate stations, we may run a little over because we just got some Mandami audio of him saying something.
All right.
You'll want to hear. Colin, welcome back. Thank you for coming on last night. Still so taken by the eloquence that you displayed last night. So much so, as you saw, we played it today. Any updates you have on your end from your appearance last night, or anything you want to add from what you said?
No, thank you. I shared it with my family. They thought it was really cool and they all loved the program. And hearing some of the other people talk, I think I kind of agree with a lot of them where they're saying, look, we don't necessarily need everything, but for them to now kind of make the turn and say, well, there is no list. What are you talking about? Why are we even still talking about it? It's such a sudden and sharp change that just any amount of transparency would go a long way. And I think certainly him just coming up to the podium and saying, look, here's what we have, here's what we can and can't release, and here's why. But I think it was on another one of your shows. Somebody mentioned that they just used the cover of like classification of records to cover a lot of their blunders and just avoid any sort of accountability with the public. So this seems like another example of that, and I'd like to see some more openness, which is what we were promised.
Yes.
Colin, do you want to hear it from the president himself, or would you be satisfied if, the deputy AG came forward and did what you just said?
So before the comment he made at the cabinet meeting, I would have been fine if it was a deputy or someone. But I mean, he so like sharply interjected and made it a point to kind of make a statement on it that I would like to see him now come back and say something about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Real quick, 201, please. This is a tweet from Jonathan Levine. Sean knows Jonathan quite well. Was at the New York Post. He said he would not send the NYPD to deal with cases of domestic violence. Go ahead and play the audio. If you can, play the audio with the tweet up, because then people can read along. If not, just play the audio. I don't know when this is from.
Do not create safety. For many, many people across this city and this state, police actually create and amplify violence. And it is very important to speak about that reality that many people have, because it pushes up against the conventional understanding of police, who are seen to be people who come to resolve violence. But, I mean, you just look at the history of the NYPD and you see that we have invested in a system that functions in many ways to punish poor Black and brown people across this city and across the state, and frankly, across this country. And there are so many responsibilities we have given to police that frankly should have nothing to do with their departments. A homeless person is on a train. They do not need a stranger with a gun to come and resolve that situation. If somebody is jaywalking, if somebody is surviving, going through domestic violence, if there are so many different situations.
Okay, so that's the
would
part
be
that
far
Jonathan
better
Levine
handled
is
by people
highlighting.
trained to deal with
You can
those
dump out of
specific
this.
situations, as opposed.
Dan, the notion that police shouldn't be called in cases of domestic violence is what Jonathan Levine is highlighting. What do you think of? Is that something that's going to hurt him or not?
I mean, I'm almost speechless. Like, that is so enraging and just so it's crazy. I hope it hurts him. Like, when I hear that, and I try to have an open mind, like, hope that whoever our next mayor is makes this city a great place. I live, we have children here. New York City police officers put themselves in such harm's way. This city is full of crazy people on subways. Our children go on it. The number of times that there are homeless people who are like out of their mind, who come up to kids, who scream at them right near, to say the police are I hope our party condemns them. If Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand and everybody cannot stand up for the NYPD after the progress they've made with crime the last few years, we saw as a child of the 80s who grew up right outside of here when New York City was a hellhole, or 90% of it was, to then see it be an unbelievable place to raise a family and then wobble the last 4 years and come back. If we can't speak up about this.
Sean.
So there's the police part about it, which I agree with Dan on. I'll say the other part is just stop for a second and dissect the sentence. A situation of domestic violence. So violence is occurring against an individual. I want someone who can stop the violence. I don't know that people who are committing violence necessarily need to be talked down. I want someone who can end it. If somebody's being attacked or brutalized, I don't want someone to come in and ask them about their feelings. I want them to protect me. And so this is just, it defies, aside from all of the stuff that Dan rightly brought up, which I agree with, it doesn't pass the common sense test. If someone is being brutalized, attacked, you want someone who can protect you, stop them. And it just shows the stupidity that is being perpetrated on folks right now.
Yeah. Do we know the date of that audio? Does anybody know? In any event, Jonathan Levine is now at the Free Beacon. That's where that was published by the place where our friend Ileana Johnson worked. So good work by Jonathan. And I'll just say again, I told you about my spidey sense. There's more coming. There's more coming. This may not be a silver bullet. This may not cost the guy the race. I certainly will go below 85% now off of that. But I'm telling you, there's more coming of stuff this guy.
I think
Mark, wait, hold on. You know whose reaction that I'm really curious about in the next couple hours? AOC.
Yeah.
Oh.
What do you say to this?
Yeah. Yeah. Domestic
Well,
violence.
here's the bigger question, Dan. Will she be asked? Because I don't think a single reporter will ask her that question.
Well, people will on social media and stuff. I mean, what, Mark, I'll be curious if this is a couple years old, because that strain ran through the base of the Democratic Party 4 or 5 years ago.
Of course.
I'll tell you what,
it was horrifying.
I will take it upon myself to tweet at her.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking forward this weekend then.
Yeah.
Now I can update this.
So it's an interesting question. Who found the audio? No offense to Jonathan Levine, but I doubt he was doing shoe leather work. Somebody handed it to him. But why did they give it to the Free Beacon, right? Why didn't they give it to the New York Post? It's a lot of interesting questions that we'll be following. All right. 2 more two-ways planned for today, 4 o'clock Eastern time. Mashup of 2 of our leading lights. Ethan Stratus' show, Random Offense, is on at 4 o'clock Eastern, and he'll be hosting Michael Moynihan today. So tune in for that. Big chance to talk to 2 of the smartest people I know and most interesting people I know. And then I'll be on two-way tonight. And we'll continue to talking about how young people are thinking about not just Epstein, but everything. And we have reuniting our favorite left-right pair, Amber Duke of the Daily Caller and Adam Mockler of Midas Touch will join me at 6 o'clock tonight. Sean, what do you have?
The entire show, I will be honored with Victor Davis Hanson, who
he's a smarty.
He is a smarty. He's insightful and he doesn't disappoint.
Yeah. All right. Good episode. Thank you all for watching. Grateful to have you with us for this week. And of course, we'll be back Monday and every day next week, 9 a.m. Eastern time, with a little show that Dan calls
A morning meeting. I got to calm down now. That thing pissed me off.
Yeah. Have a great day, great weekend, everybody. And Sean and I will both see you at 6.
Bye.